What if the reality you are seeing right now is a hallucination designed to keep you safe, but blind? What if your brain isn't a producer of consciousness, but a prison guard specifically evolved to filter it out? For 50,000 years across every continent, from the frozen tundras of Siberia to the humid depths of the Amazon, elite technicians of the mind have known a secret that modern neuroscience is only just rediscovering. They knew that the world we call real is merely a thin, fragile interface hiding a roaring ocean of intelligence just beneath the surface. We dismissed them as primitive magicians. We called their visions madness. But today, the most advanced brain imaging technology on Earth has revealed something terrifyingly precise about their methods. In exactly 7 minutes, you will understand the specific biological mechanism that keeps you trapped in the illusion of the ego. By minute 12, you will learn the exact rhythmic technology ancient cultures used to shut that mechanism down. And by the end of this video, you will possess the psychological map to navigate the hidden dimensions of your own mind without getting lost. Most people assume that a shaman is just a religious figure, a priest of nature. But the detail nobody talks about is that the word shaman itself, originating from the Tungus people of Siberia, implies something far more technical. It means one who knows. It is not about faith, it is about data. Anthropologists were shocked to find that Australian Aboriginals, without ever meeting a South American tribe, described the exact same serpent of light in their visions that Amazonian shamans have worshipped for millennia. Even more disturbing, Carl Jung, the father of analytical psychology, encountered these same entities in his own induced trances, calling them autonomous complexes of the collective unconscious. Think about that for a second. If a monk in Tibet, a hunter in the Kalahari, and a Swiss psychologist all see the same entities when the veil is lifted, are those entities imaginary, or are they more real than the chair you are sitting on? In 1954, Aldous Huxley proposed that the human brain is a reducing valve, a machine designed to crush the infinite influx of reality down to a trickle so we don't go insane. The shaman is simply the hacker who knows how to open the valve. But what happens when a normal person tries to force this valve open today without the ancient safety protocols? Are you ready for the first step that changes everything? To understand how this ancient technology works, we have to look away from the romanticized image of the wise elder healing with herbs and look at the brutal, often terrifying reality of the call. In almost every shamanic tradition, the journey begins not with a choice, but with a crisis. They call it the shamanic sickness. A young member of the tribe falls ill. They experience seizures, visions of being dismembered by demons, or intense psychological turmoil. Modern psychiatry would immediately diagnose this as a psychotic break or schizophrenia. They would medicate it. They would suppress it. They would try to fix the valve to make it tight again. But the ancients saw this differently. To them, this wasn't a breakdown, it was a breakthrough. The spirits were knocking on the door of the mind, and the future shaman was the one whose walls were thin enough to hear them. Mircea Eliade, the great historian of religion, defined shamanism primarily as techniques of ecstasy. Notice the word technique. This implies a systematic, repeatable process. The illness was the invitation, but the training was the engineering. The initiate had to learn how to navigate the geography of the unseen. Imagine being thrown into the middle of a dark, stormy ocean without a compass. That is psychosis. Now imagine navigating that same ocean with a detailed map and a sturdy ship. That is shamanism. The difference between the madman and the mystic is that the mystic knows how to swim. This brings us to a concept that bridges the gap between the cave paintings of Lascaux and the sterile labs of Harvard. It is the concept of the hollow bone. In Native American traditions, the healer must become like a hollow bone, empty of self, empty of ego, so that the Great Spirit can flow through them. For centuries, this sounded like poetic metaphor. But in 2001, neuroscientists at Washington University in St. Louis stumbled upon a brain network that is active exactly when you are doing nothing but thinking about yourself. They called it the Default Mode Network, or DMN. This is the neurological seat of the ego. It is the narrator in your head that constantly tells you the story of who you are, what you regret about yesterday, and what you worry about tomorrow. Here is the twist that connects 50,000 years of history. When researchers scanned the brains of experienced meditators and people in deep trance states, they found that the default mode network doesn't just quiet down, it virtually shuts off. The hollow bone is not a metaphor. It is a biological state of deactivated ego. The ancient shamans didn't need fMRI machines to map the brain. They mapped it from the inside out. They discovered that when you shut down the me center, the reducing valve of the brain opens wide, and the floodgates of the collective unconscious burst open. But why is this important to you right now, sitting in front of a screen? Because we live in a culture that worships the default mode network. We are addicted to the me. Our social media, our ambitions, our anxieties are all fuel for this specific brain circuit. We have calcified the valve. We have mistaken the map for the territory. And because of this, we feel isolated, cut off from nature, and cut off from the deep sources of wisdom that sleep in our DNA. The shamanic journey is the cure for this isolation. It is the deliberate, controlled dissolution of the user interface we call reality. However, dissolving the ego is not a peaceful float on a cloud. It is a death. The anthropologist Joseph Campbell, who studied myths from all over the world, realized that the structure of the shamanic journey is identical to the classic hero's journey. It involves a departure, an initiation, and a return. The initiation almost always involves a descent into the underworld, the belly of the whale. In psychological terms, this is the confrontation with the shadow. You cannot reach the light without passing through the darkness of your own repressed fears. The shaman doesn't avoid the monsters. He feeds them. He asks them what they want. He integrates them. In the Siberian tradition, the initiate often experiences a vision where their body is torn apart by spirits. Their bones are scrubbed clean, and they are reassembled with iron and gold. This sounds horrific to the modern ear, but symbolically, it is the ultimate restructuring of the psyche. The old limited self must be dismantled so that a new expanded self can be built. It is a process of disintegration followed by a higher order of integration. This is exactly what happens in deep states of neuroplasticity. The rigid pathways of the brain are softened, allowing new connections to form. The trauma that was stuck in a loop gets processed. The depression that felt like a permanent weight dissolves into a new understanding. But here is where it gets truly strange. When these travelers return from the underworld, they don't just come back with healed emotions. They come back with information, detailed knowledge about medicinal plants they have never seen before, locations of game animals for the hunt, prophecies of future events. If the journey is just in their heads, just a hallucination of the brain, how do they retrieve verifiable information from the external world? This is the point where materialist science hits a wall, and we have to consider the possibility that the collective unconscious described by Jung is not just a storage room in your private basement, but a shared cloud network of all human and perhaps non-human experience. Archaeologists in 1994 discovered acoustic properties in ancient Paleolithic caves that amplify sound frequencies exactly in the range of 110 Hz. This is a frequency known to deactivate the speech center of the brain and stimulate the emotional centers. They were building cathedrals of sound 20,000 years before the first stone temple was raised. They were engineers of consciousness. Have you ever felt a sudden, inexplicable urge to escape your own life? A feeling that the person you are pretending to be isn't the real you? This longing you feel is the ancient memory of a time when the valve was open. It is the call echoing through the noise of the modern world. But answering that call requires tools. You cannot just wish the valve open. You need the technology. And the most primary, universal, and powerful tool in the shamanic toolkit is something you have heard 1,000 times, but never truly listened to: the drum. We tend to think of drumming as music, as entertainment. But in the context of the journey, the drum is not an instrument. It is a vehicle. Laboratory studies on sonic driving have shown that a monotonous drum beat of 4 to 7 beats per second corresponds exactly to theta brainwaves. Theta waves are the frequency of vivid dreaming, deep creativity, and the twilight state between sleeping and waking. When the shaman drums, he is not playing a song. He is broadcasting a carrier wave. He is manually adjusting the frequency of the brain to force it out of the beta state, the anxious, alert, problem-solving state of the default mode network, and down into the trance state of theta. It is a sonic key that fits the lock of the nervous system. This is why the drum is often called the shaman's horse or the canoe. It is the thing you ride into the other world, and it works on everyone. It is biological, not cultural. You don't have to believe in the spirits for a steady 240 beats per minute rhythm to alter your brain chemistry. It happens automatically. This suggests that the capacity for ecstasy, for leaving the body and traveling to the spirit world, is hardwired into our biology. It is a factory setting that we have forgotten how to access. But the drum is just the engine. The fuel often comes from the plant kingdom. This is the most controversial and misunderstood aspect of the shamanic path. Ayahuasca in the Amazon, peyote in North America, iboga in Africa, psilocybin mushrooms in Europe. Our modern society calls them drugs and lumps them in with addictive substances that numb the mind. But the ancients called them plant teachers or sacred medicines. The distinction is crucial. An addictive drug is used to escape reality, to numb pain, to contract consciousness. A psychedelic plant medicine is used to confront reality, to feel pain fully, and to expand consciousness. When you look at the molecular structure of psilocybin or DMT, found in ayahuasca, it bears a striking resemblance to serotonin, the neurotransmitter that regulates our mood and perception. It fits into the same receptors in the brain, but with a twist. It doesn't just facilitate normal transmission, it creates a hyper-connected state. Brain imaging studies from Imperial College London have shown that under the influence of these compounds, parts of the brain that usually never speak to each other start communicating furiously. The visual cortex talks to the memory center, the emotional center talks to the logic center. The brain becomes a unified, glowing web of information. This hyperconnectivity explains the phenomenon of synesthesia often reported in shamanic journeys, hearing colors, seeing sounds, feeling the taste of a memory. The reducing valve is completely dismantled. The filter is gone. The person perceives the mind at large. But this is also where the danger lies. Without the structure of ritual, without the map provided by tradition and the guidance of an elder, this flood of information can be overwhelming. It can look like madness. This is why the container, the ritual space, is just as important as the substance itself. The ritual provides the coordinates for the journey. A fascinating detail that often gets overlooked is the concept of the axis mundi, or the world tree. In almost every shamanic cosmology, there is a central tree, mountain, or pillar that connects the three worlds: the lower world of animals and ancestors, the middle world of human affairs, and the upper world of celestial spirits. The shaman travels up and down this axis. But where is this axis? Is it a physical place? The great insight of the Swiss psychologist Carl Jung was that the axis mundi is inside you. It is the spinal column of the human soul. The lower world corresponds to the deep, instinctual brain, the reptilian brain and the autonomic nervous system. The upper world corresponds to the neocortex and the higher functions of intuition and reason. The shamanic journey is a movement through the layers of one's own evolutionary history. When a shaman descends to the lower world to retrieve a power animal, they are not just finding a spirit guide, they are reconnecting with the lost instinctual power of the human organism. They are reintegrating the animal vitality that civilization forces us to repress. Think about the implications of this. It means that the spirits are not ghosts floating in the air. They are ancient, encoded intelligences that live within the architecture of your own nervous system. They are the archetypes: the warrior, the healer, the trickster, the great mother. These are not characters in a storybook. They are the operating systems of the human psyche. When we lose contact with them, we become neurotic, weak, and fragmented. We lose our power. The shamanic retrieval of a soul part or a power animal is the psychological act of reclaiming a piece of yourself that you locked away in the basement because you were told it wasn't civilized. But wait until you hear what happens to the monk who reached the final stage of this inner cartography. The parallels between what a Siberian shaman sees in a trance and what a Tibetan Buddhist monk visualizes in deep meditation are so precise that they defy coincidence. The ancient texts of the Bardo Thodol, known to the West as the Tibetan Book of the Dead, describe the process of dying in terrifyingly specific detail. They do not speak of a peaceful fade into black. They speak of the dissolution of the elements. Earth sinks into water. The body feels heavy, immovable, as if buried under a mountain. Water sinks into fire. The fluids dry up. The mind becomes hazy. Fire sinks into air. The body loses its heat. The breath becomes shallow. And finally, air sinks into consciousness. In this final stage, the text says, "The clear light of reality dawns." If the practitioner recognizes this light as their own true nature, they are liberated. If they flee from it in fear, they fall back into the cycle of rebirth. What truly shocked the researchers was not the poetry of this description, but the biology of it. When neuroscientists studied the brainwaves of experienced practitioners entering the deepest states of meditation, states designed to simulate this death while still alive, they found a synchronization of gamma waves that is practically impossible in a normal waking state. Gamma waves are the fastest brain frequencies associated with high-level information processing and the binding of different senses into a coherent picture of reality. Usually these waves appear in short bursts when you solve a puzzle or have an idea, but in these psychonauts, the gamma waves became a sustained, high-amplitude hum. The brain was not shutting down. It was waking up to a level of coherence that makes our normal consciousness look like a fragmented, static-filled radio signal. This brings us to a paradox that breaks the logic of the materialist worldview. If the brain is just a biological machine evolved for survival, why does it have a built-in God mode? Why do we have specific receptors for molecules that dissolve our sense of self? And why, when we strip away the cultural layers, the feathers of the Amazonian shaman, the robes of the monk, the lab coat of the scientist, do we find the exact same geometric patterns underneath? In the late 1980s, the cognitive archaeologist David Lewis Williams made a discovery that changed how we view ancient art forever. He noticed that the abstract markings found in Paleolithic caves, the zigzags, the spirals, the grids, the dots, were not random doodles. They were identical to the form constants or entoptic phenomena reported by modern subjects in sensory deprivation tanks and LSD trials. These patterns are not out there in the spirit world. They are the architecture of your own visual cortex. They are the grid lines of the biological interface. When the shaman enters the trance, the interface becomes visible. He is seeing the code of the simulation. Archaeologists in South Africa found rock art dating back 27,000 years that depicts these exact entoptic geometries morphing into animals and spirits, proving that the technology of the sacred is as old as the human mind itself. But knowing the code is dangerous if you don't know how to rewrite it. This leads us to the most practical and healing aspect of the shamanic path, a concept that modern psychology is only now beginning to accept: soul retrieval. In the shamanic worldview, when you experience a trauma, a sudden accident, a violent attack, a deep heartbreak, or even a prolonged period of neglect as a child, a piece of your vital essence, your soul, flees the body to survive. It goes to a safe place in the spirit world, hidden away from the pain. In clinical terms, we call this dissociation. The person survives, but they come back lesser. They feel numb. They feel like they are watching their life through a pane of glass. They say things like, "I felt like a part of me died that day." The shaman takes this literally. The part did leave. And the cure is not just to talk about the trauma, but to go and get the part back. The shaman enters the altered state, travels to the lower world, the deep subconscious, tracks down the lost fragment, which is often stuck in a time loop of the traumatic event, and negotiates its return. When this reintegration happens, the physical shift in the patient is often immediate and startling. Color returns to the face, the posture changes. The eyes, which looked vacant, suddenly have presence. It is as if the lights in the house were turned back on. Modern therapies like EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, or somatic experiencing, are essentially rediscovering this mechanism. They are techniques to access the frozen memory in the nervous system, the lost soul part, and integrate it back into the present moment. The language is different, but the map is the same. The ancients didn't have the word neuroplasticity, but they mastered the practice of it. However, there is a layer deeper than personal trauma. There is the trauma that isn't yours but lives in your blood. The concept of ancestral curses sounds like the plot of a horror movie. But in 2013, a study on mice published in Nature Neuroscience provided a chilling biological basis for this ancient belief. Researchers conditioned mice to fear the smell of cherry blossoms by pairing it with a mild electric shock. The mice learned to freeze in terror whenever they smelled the flower. The researchers then bred these mice. Their children, who had never been shocked and never met their parents, were born terrified of the smell of cherry blossoms. Even the grandchildren showed the same specific fear response. The trauma had physically altered the DNA expression in the sperm and eggs. The memory of the pain was genetic. The curse was real. When a shaman performs a ritual to heal the ancestral line, to clear the bad blood of 7 generations, they are addressing this epigenetic burden. They are using ritual, intention, and altered states to send a signal to the biological system that the war is over, that the famine is gone, that the predator has left the clearing. They are rewriting the gene expression of the lineage. Have you ever felt a deep, irrational fear or a heavy sadness that seems to have no origin in your own life experiences? Could this be the echo of a trauma endured by a grandmother you never met, living on as a ghost in your own cells? This realization changes the entire game. It means your journey is not just about you. You are the vessel for a story that has been playing out for centuries. You are the cutting edge of a biological arrow that stretches back to the beginning of time. And the veil you are trying to lift is the accumulated coping mechanisms of 1,000 ancestors who survived so you could sit here today. But this power comes with a terrifying risk. The same plasticity that allows for profound healing also allows for profound destabilization. The reducing valve of the brain exists for a reason. It keeps us functional. It keeps us focused on gathering food, paying taxes, and avoiding traffic. When you tear it open prematurely, or without the insulation of a grounded nervous system, you don't always get enlightenment. Sometimes you get chaos. The ancients called it sorcery, the misuse of spiritual power. Jung called it inflation, the ego swelling up because it thinks it is the god it saw in the vision. We see this today in the psychedelic renaissance, where people chase peak experiences without the discipline of integration. They blow the doors off their perception, see the infinite, and then try to fit that infinite ocean into the tiny cup of their unhealed ego. The cup shatters. This is why the shaman is always an initiate first. They spend years learning to be hollow bones before they are allowed to channel the lightning. There is a document that was quietly declassified by the CIA in 2003, part of the Stargate project, that hints at the government's own obsession with these states. It details the gateway process, a training program designed to synchronize the brain hemispheres and induce out-of-body states for intelligence gathering. In page 25 of the analysis, the author, a lieutenant colonel, concludes that the human mind is capable of interacting with the absolute, a field of infinite energy outside of space-time. The military wasn't studying this for enlightenment, they were studying it for supremacy. They confirmed that the veil is permeable. But the most disturbing part of the report is what they found about the nature of time in these states. They discovered that when the brain clicks into this specific frequency, the linear flow of past, present, and future collapses into a single point. This aligns perfectly with the shamanic experience of the eternal now, but it raises a question that keeps philosophers awake at night. If the future already exists in the absolute, and the shaman can see it, is the future written? Or is the act of seeing it what actually creates it? The implication is that consciousness is not a passive witness to reality. It is an active participant. The observer effect in quantum physics suggests that the act of observation collapses the wave function into a particle. The shaman takes this to the macro level. The ritual is the observation that collapses the chaos of life into a specific destiny. You are not just watching the movie of your life, you are the projector. Modern science calls this the placebo effect and dismisses it as a trick of the mind. But think about what the placebo effect really is. It is the ability of a belief to alter biology. It is the mind commanding the body to heal and the body obeying. It is the weakest form of magic, but it is magic nonetheless. The shaman maximizes this effect. They turn the trick into a methodology. By engaging all the senses, the smell of the sage, the beat of the drum, the taste of the medicine, the sight of the costume, they create a hyper-placebo, a belief so strong that it overrides the laws of probability. But when a normal person in the modern world with their modern mind tries to access this power, something unexpected often happens. They don't find peace, they find the dweller on the threshold. The dweller on the threshold is a term used in ancient esoteric orders to describe the terrifying entity that stands at the gate of higher consciousness. It is described as a hideous monster, a dragon or a demon that blocks the path. But the great secret of the mystery schools is that the dweller is not an external enemy. It is the crystallization of your own shadow. It is every lie you have told yourself, every guilt you have swallowed, every fear you have refused to face condensed into a single psychic form. When you force the valve open with psychedelics or extreme breath work without the proper psychological preparation, you run straight into the dweller. And because you don't recognize him as yourself, you panic. This is what modern psychiatry calls a bad trip or a psychotic break. But the shaman knows the password. The shaman knows that the dweller is actually a guardian. He is there to stop you from entering the Holy of Holies before you are pure enough to handle the voltage. The only way to pass him is not to fight him, but to embrace him, to acknowledge him, to say, "I see you, and you are me." In 2016, a groundbreaking study at Johns Hopkins University involving terminally ill cancer patients found that those who had the most difficult and challenging experiences during their guided psilocybin sessions often had the most profound long-term reductions in depression and anxiety. The bad trip was actually the therapy. The confrontation with the monster was the healing. The patients who tried to fight the experience, to run away from the fear, stayed stuck. Those who surrendered, who moved toward the monster, found that it dissolved into smoke, revealing the light behind it. This leads to a paradox that breaks the logic of our comfort-obsessed society. The more you try to protect your ego, the more you suffer. The more you are willing to let your ego die, the more truly alive you become. The safety of the known world is actually a cage. The danger of the unknown is the only door to freedom. But there is a trap waiting on the other side of the door, a trap even more dangerous than the dweller. It is the trap of the spiritual ego. You see this everywhere today. People who return from a retreat or a ceremony believing they are now superior, chosen, or awake, while everyone else is a sheep. They wear their experience like a badge of honor. But the true shaman knows that the peak experience is not the goal, it is merely the lesson. The goal is the return. Joseph Campbell called this the master of two worlds. The hero must not only ascend to the spirit world and steal the fire, he must bring it back down to the village and use it to cook the soup. If he stays on the mountain, he is useless to his people. If he forgets the mountain, he is useless to his soul. He must learn to live with 1 foot in the finite and 1 foot in the infinite. This is the hardest part. The neuroplasticity window opened by these states lasts for about 2 weeks. This is the critical period. If you do not change your habits, your environment, and your actions during this window, the brain will settle back into its old grooves. The vision will fade into a memory, and the memory will fade into a dream. Integration is the art of anchoring the lightning. It is the boring daily work of meditation, journaling, and ethical living that turns a momentary state into a permanent trait. Have you ever had a moment of pure clarity where you knew exactly what you needed to do, only to lose that feeling the moment you return to your daily routine? That fading is the reducing valve tightening back up. It is the gravity of the default mode network, pulling you back into the simulation. But now you know the secret. You know that the valve can be adjusted. You know that the simulation is programmed by your own focus. The implications of this journey go far beyond personal healing. They touch on the very nature of human evolution. We are living in a time of crisis. The old maps of reality, materialism, consumerism, separation, are leading us off a cliff. We are destroying our planet because we view it as dead matter to be exploited rather than a living system to be respected. The shamanic perspective, validated now by the science of systems theory and quantum entanglement, tells us that everything is connected, that the Earth itself is a conscious entity, and we are its sensory organs. Perhaps the call that so many people are feeling today, the sudden interest in meditation, in plant medicines, in ancient wisdom, is not a fad. Perhaps it is an immune response from the planetary consciousness itself. Maybe the Earth is calling us back to the technology of the sacred, because it is the only way we can survive the next century. We have mastered the technology of matter. We can split the atom and travel to Mars. But we are kindergarteners in the technology of the mind. The ancient shamans were the astronauts of the inner space. They left us the maps. They showed us that the veil is not a wall but a curtain. And they showed us that the only thing stopping us from pulling it back is our own fear of how vast, how beautiful, and how responsible we truly are. The journey beyond the veil is not a return to the past. It is a preview of the future, a future where science and spirituality merge into a single unified understanding of the cosmos, a future where we realize that we are not strangers in the universe, but the universe itself, waking up from a long, strange dream. The question is no longer, is it real? The science has spoken. The experience is real. The question is, now that you know the door is there, do you have the courage to knock?